All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world tuning in to another AMA session. Today, this is a series of AMA sessions, Ask Me Anything sessions that we host here at Equilibrium to dive deeper into the DeFi or decentralized finance ecosystem and everything that's happening on all levels, from infrastructure all the way through the newest, latest, and greatest, and what's to come in the future. For those of you who may not know about Equilibrium, and this is your first time tuning in, we are a decentralized framework for generating asset-backed stablecoins and building next-generation DeFi or decentralized finance applications. And again, we like to host these sessions with those in the community, our friends, our partners, and others, as decentralized finance is something that's changing dramatically, very quickly, and really starting to reshape the way we look at finance today and going forward. If this is your first time tuning into an AMA or an Ask Me Anything session, just to give you a little insight on how these work. So for the next 60 minutes, we have an outstanding guest from the community and one of our partners who you, the community, can ask anything. Hence the name, Ask Me Anything. In this case, Ask Thomas Anything, an ATA. During this time, you can drop your questions in our Telegram chat, where our team, Mike, and everyone else from Equilibrium will be flagging those, sending them over to me to make sure we can get those to Thomas. If the question is relevant to the discussion, we'll ask it in real time. If not, we'll hold it to the end, where we'll go lightning round with Thomas to get all of the latest and greatest questions answered. And because we appreciate everything you do for us and for the industry overall as the community, we like to reward the best question asked, which will be selected by our guest, in this case, Thomas today, at the end, and the winner will get a little bit of EOSDT, and they can either keep or donate to charity, because there's a lot of good causes out there that we like to support. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome, and by the way, I'm Kyle, just in case anyone has any questions. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest, Thomas, the founder and CEO of Provable Things and the pToken. Thomas, welcome.
Hello, Kyle. Hello, everyone. And thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Super excited, as a partner of the Equilibrium community and ecosystem, but also just as a thought leader in the DeFi and decentralized apps ecosystems. It's an honor to have you. Would love to have an introduction. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, kind of how you got started in this exciting, rapidly crazy world of what's called blockchain.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you said, this has been constantly changing, right? So I've been in the space since 2012. So it has been 8 years now. And I mean, over those 8 years, I can definitely say it has changed so many times that it feels every time as if it was, a new ecosystem. So, projects are evolving and things move. So it's not that, we start from scratch every time. But I would say that there is a different hot topic every couple of years, which varies depending, on what the basically interesting use cases are, what the open challenges are, and what's left to be made for the ecosystem to progress. Mm-hmm. So how did I start? Well, in 2012, I was at university. As you can easily guess from my really bad English accent, I'm Italian. So I was at my second year at the university, and basically I have a technical background. So I was mostly interested into parallel computing, which is very much relevant and basically what happens under the hood with the typical proof of work mining. So I got into, I found out about Bitcoin back then because of GPU mining and because of, the parallel computing aspect of it. So I started because of basically a technical interest, and I started diving into it because it was really hard for me at the beginning, to understand what kind of beast I had in front of me with these new, cryptocurrencies. Nobody knew anything back then around, what Bitcoin was, what were the implications. I remember friends of mine that were basically saying, "Okay, Thomas, what are you doing with those sort of fake money kind of stuff?" Nobody knew what cryptocurrency were. So basically I got started with mining, and then I moved on, and I decided very quickly. I remember just 4 or 5 months after discovering it, I decided I wanted to do it full time. So basically, I left university and I left my previous job that I had, and I started working full time in the space. And I started with mining, as I said. So first thing I did was starting some local meetups, to build a local community, and to find other people that were crazy enough back then to be interested into Bitcoin, as there was pretty much nothing else. And in 2013, I went to Texas to work for a mining company. So I was employee number 4 in a company that was building ASIC miners. And after just a few months, we were in control of 5% of the Bitcoin hash rate. So this was like a very intense and quick ride. I enjoyed it a lot also because many people in that company today are part of bigger projects that are still alive, and they don't do maybe mining anymore, similarly to me. Now I focus on different aspects, but they started there. They started at Cointerra, which was this company making ASIC miners in 2013. So yeah, I mean, this was my first experience in the space. And then I moved quickly on, other initiatives, like the price of Bitcoin dropped, and this is typically, a disaster for any mining operation. It was a disaster also for us back then, and so many companies failed because of the price of Bitcoin going down. This was just after the peak at the all-time high. Above $1,000. So when I first entered, I remember my first Bitcoin I bought at $10. But in just a couple of years, it went up very quickly a couple of times. First one, it was how much? $200, something like that. And the second time, it went above 1,000. And afterwards, there was the free fall, empty gox failing. So, I lived all of this, and I saw the company that, the mining company was the fastest growing startup in Austin, Texas that year. And the year after, it went bankrupt because of the falling Bitcoin price. So, yeah. Right. So interesting experience. But then I moved on, and I started a project that I later sold to another company that basically was helping the process of buying your first Bitcoin. So it was a cash to Bitcoin marketplace. We were doing an escrow service for people that were interested to go at the tobacco shops or things like that. And pay a small amount of cash, typically 50, 100 euros, things like that, and buy some Bitcoin. So this got a lot of traction in Italy and in France back then. Also in Europe, in other European countries, we had quite some traction. It was very limited to the countries we had integrations with. But later on, I found several people working in the space that told me, "Yeah, hi Thomas, I know you. I bought my first Bitcoin on your platform." So this was quite, quite interesting, as it was a pain back then to buy Bitcoin, to buy cryptocurrencies. It wasn't easy. I mean, today you can just use even not just a credit card, right? And there are many ways you can do, what we call fiat on ramp, the crypto on ramp. Like you buy your first, EOS or whatever token you may want to buy. So it was a very different space.
Mm-hmm.
And
fast forward to today.
I mean, fast forward
different.
today, many things have changed. The buying experience now is amazingly simple, right? With wire transfer, there are banks that are sort of crypto friendly, and back then there was none. I remember spending like countless hours with any bank in Italy, in the UK, in Switzerland. I mean, in different countries in Europe, where basically they were really afraid of crypto, and just opening a bank account for a company working in the space was a nightmare. So today it's sort of doable. It's way easier. There are some banks that are crypto friendly. Back then, none was. So, and afterwards, I started Oracle Eyes, which today is called Provable Things. So that was an idea that was born in late 2014. So the company started in January 2015. So it has been basically operating for more than 5 years. And since then, I've started other initiatives, like the Edu project is a wallet doing that. I sold the company. So now basically I'm in charge of Provable Things. As I've a role in the holding company that has acquired mine. So I founded Provable Things, and now I'm still partially running it, and I'm in charge of setting the strategy, basically.
And so what led you to create Provable Things? And what, just so for the audience, right, that may be tuning in for the first time, what is Provable Things? What are you guys doing at Provable Things?
Today, this is very simple to explain. I remember 3 years ago, it was pretty much impossible for people that were new to crypto, because the term Oracle was kind of unknown. Mm-hmm. So I remember that when it was when I came up with the idea, I was preparing some my presentation for a talk around crypto, and the scope of my the narrative in my talk was the one of explaining why cryptocurrencies were important for the general audience, like for everyone. And so I had to explain how blockchain could have an impact to anything in the real world. And the missing piece was the Oracle. So the Oracle is like an actor that somehow makes blockchains speak with the external world, like the internet or anything external to the blockchain itself. So Provable Things was born to implement an Oracle, because back then there was no Oracle system. So there was no way to design a decentralized application that could somehow read real world events such as price feeds or the weather, or that could trigger a real world condition, such as when you receive a payment, then unlock my smart door or my padlock or whatever. So all these kind of interactions from the blockchain to the outside world, or from the outside world to the blockchain, are typically intermediated by an Oracle, which is a very weird actor, actually, because the blockchain is all about removing intermediaries and decentralizing, making a transparent system. And the Oracle is a strange piece, because it's a new intermediary in an ecosystem that is trying to get rid of intermediaries. So that's why it's very complex to understand it. Normally, you will think you don't want to add an intermediary, but in that case, you kind of need it, because normally blockchain applications are like in a sandbox. They live, we say, in a walled garden. It's not possible for a DApp to reach out to anything external to the blockchain. So that's the challenge that what an oracle is, like this actor that we kind of need, but we don't want it. We want it to help to overcome the limitation, but we don't want the oracle to mess up with the security guarantees of the blockchain. So that's why I came up with the idea of implementing an oracle, because we needed it. And that's what Oracleize, now Provable Things, has been doing for over 5 years.
And so we had a few, it's great, thank you. And we had a few questions around that specifically. And it sounds like, to me, what you're saying is the oracle sits in the middle, transparent that it's there, and it is allowing communication between both the blockchain, so something is very secure and complex, to an outside source, so like the weather, for instance. So if weather data is incoming, we're going to gather that for our decentralized application. We can put an oracle out there, and the oracle will grab the data from, say, AccuWeather, take the put on the blockchain. Is that
that's
right?
Correct. Yeah, that's
okay.
correct.
Okay, Jagdesh, I know you asked that question. That's a great question. If you need more explanation, we can go further into it, but I think that's probably a pretty good high level. And Thomas, do smart contracts play a role in any of this? So if with that oracle, I mean, it's an intermediary, but there's got to be more to it. So how does it actually function? So let's use that AccuWeather example, if that's okay, as continuing.
Typically, when I start my explanations of oracles, I always start with 3 names, which are critical to understand in order to speak, the same language, so that we ensure we know who are all the actors involved. So one actor is the oracle, like this intermediary. Another actor, of course, I'm saying oracle, but what I mean is like the oracle system. It may be more than one actor. It may be a network of oracles. It doesn't need to be like a single entity. I'm just referring to the oracle as we normally call it, the oracle problem. But the oracle is like, first of all, a service and a problem. So the centralized or decentralized aspects of it we are not discussing them right now with the definitions. Then they depend on what kind of oracle you have. Some are more centralized, some are less, and there are different implications. So one entity is this oracle system. Another one is what, for example, AccuWeather, as you said, or any external website we may want to get data from. That one we call the data source. So the data source is this external communication with a DApp or a smart contract. So the third entity is normally a smart contract. So the smart contract, the oracle, and the data source, the oracle wants to make the other 2 parties communicate. And the oracle is mostly, a transport mean. You just want to move around the communication between the other 2 pieces without being able to tamper with the data that is in transit. So you want to ensure everything is safe. You want to give guarantees that while the 2 players are not able to communicate with each other, you enable it in a secure way. It's like if it was, a messaging system that is end-to-end encrypted. Right. So the encryption typically gives you a couple of things. One is privacy, and the other one is it guarantees integrity and authenticity. So in this case, we don't guarantee transparency. We don't guarantee privacy. So it's not possible to keep data secret because the blockchain is not. So when we put data on the blockchain, it becomes visible for everyone. So we don't necessarily care around making some data from AccuWeather, for instance, secret. We rather want to make it transparent and to show it really comes from there with no alterations. And so we want to show the oracle has not done anything bad, and we want to show the data we are sending to the smart contract is really the one coming from AccuWeather with no alterations. Otherwise, the oracle could just choose trigger any behavior. It could say one instead of 0 and trigger a wrong payment. So it will basically choose anything and be able to control the blockchain, which is not what we want. So it's important that the Oracle preserves the integrity of the data, the authenticity of the data, and proves it to the smart contract on the blockchain. What's important to always keep in mind, though, is that data, in most cases, is inherently trusted. When we look for a piece of data outside of the blockchain, we are somehow trusting the data source. For instance, I remember one of the first dApps we built in 2015. It was used by a YouTuber actually back then, and she wanted to she wanted a smart contract to collect payments from people she wanted to advertise on the show. Like there were companies that wanted to be advertised in the show, and she wanted to basically give a guarantee to those companies that the payment would have gone back to them if the video didn't get enough traction. So let's say she set in advance a target, such as I will reach 5,000 views by one day, by 24 hours, something like that. The smart contract acted as an escrow, so they could put money to the smart contract, and she had the guarantee she would have been paid, so she could advertise those projects. And then the smart contract was reaching out to YouTube to check the number of views for the video and decide what to do with the money. If she had to send them back to the companies who had paid because the video wasn't successful after all, or if the money had to go to her because of as a fee for the advertisement. So this was like a system to guarantee the price was fair for the ads, and it worked. I mean, it was a very interesting project. It was based on Provable back then. It was using our Oracle to reach out. It was on Ethereum in that case, and it was connecting an Ethereum smart contract with YouTube APIs. What's the problem with that? Well, there is just one problem, that the entire system was trustless other than YouTube, because YouTube could have tampered with the number of views of the video in principle. So what you were really doing was asking YouTube if the payment has to be done or not, if it had to be done or not. So it's always important to keep in mind what's the data source that you choose, in this case YouTube, because in some cases you get to choose and you can diversify the risk or lower the risk significantly, asking to more data sources, the same questions, for instance. In others, it's not really an option. Like for a YouTube video, YouTube will always be able to tamper with the number of views if they wanted. So it's impossible to know what the real number of views. You just, when I ask how popular my video was, I'm really asking what's the claim from YouTube around the success of my video. They could just mess up with the numbers and increase it artificially. Nobody would be able to tell. So it's always important, especially in DeFi, right? Because we don't want the financial system to be under the control of, some entities that maybe are not direct, actors in the blockchain, but after all, they end up having control because they are somehow, distributing some data that ends up controlling behavior of a smart contract. So that's very important to keep in mind.
So with that being said, of oracles, where do you see this going? Is this something that we're going to see more, or is this something you think will start entering in the enterprise space more aggressively and people using it? Where do you see this going?
Well, oracles are especially in the last year, I would say, because there is a strong need for oracles and reliable oracles with DeFi. So, the last years, I've seen hundreds of applications implementing use cases based on an oracle. But the number of applications that got traction in blockchain in general are still quite limited, and the amount of applications that are getting traction and need an oracle is a subset. So that's even smaller number. And a big chunk of those, I would say, are DeFi oriented. So it's very important for oracles that they focus in becoming increasingly, secure for securing, high relevant amount of money that you find at stake in those DeFi protocols. So is the enterprise interested, or who is the target of the oracles? I think the target for this oracle system is mostly, the dApps and the smart contracts that are being designed for that are being designed in DeFi or with other use cases in mind that need to have an impact in the real world. Yet, I don't think enterprises have a strong need for super reliable oracles right now, because we have integrations with Provable with most blockchains, also enterprise chains, and we have worked with a number of banks and other financial institutions in the past, with insurance companies. So we have spoken with many enterprises, and what they say is that for them, blockchain is not really about decentralization. It's more around creating a trust minimized system and giving more transparency over the legacy system they already have. So an oracle needs to maintain that sort of perceived trust for their clients. So it needs to be transparent, but it doesn't need for their use cases to be fully decentralized or to be 100% secure. They would, instead of having a mathematical guarantee, in most cases, they would prefer to have someone reputable that basically gives them guarantees that if something goes wrong in a technical system, they will be able to intervene and change it. So that's a different need than the one we see on public blockchains. Because on public blockchains, the leading narrative is that we want to make a system as decentralized as possible. So we don't want people to be able to intervene. Yet we need some, software that we don't have yet, right? We are not quite there yet. We are getting there. It's improving fast. So it's two different kind of oracles, right? One is like a decentralized oracle that needs to be super safe and needs to be able to run continuously, possibly without many changes, which is very hard. And the other one is like an oracle that has, a reputation system in place and that, gives guarantees for the enterprises. So they're looking for different needs. I think there is a space for all these use cases. In all of them, we would need anyway, some more years, I would say, for oracles to reiterate, for tools in the space to, reiterate and get better. So it will take some time. Okay. But we are getting there. I mean, the ecosystem is getting much stronger over the years, and making dApps or smart contracts a couple of years ago, even just a couple of years ago, it was a nightmare compared to today. So
yeah, no, I agree. I've taken a look at the technical architecture for many dApps and just the beginning to end, if you will, of building one. And it's easy to get cross-eyed really quickly and trying to figure out where to start and where to end, and everything in between. But it's good that you guys at Provable and others out there, including us, these frameworks are pieces to build that story out a little easier. Which takes me to the next question: pTokens. We haven't had a chance to talk about this yet. What are pTokens? This is a very exciting things you guys have developed and that you're running. We'd love to dive into what these are. We've got a ton of good questions coming around that as well.
Yeah, sure. So pTokens are like a new project that we have started 1 year ago within Provable. So Provable Things is the company that has designed and started the Oracle service that is called Provable and was previously called Oracleize. And 1 year ago, we started focusing on this specific use case of pTokens. That it isn't really a new use case. It's a need that in theory was seen many years ago. And this is the need of basically being able to move cryptocurrencies and tokens across blockchains. So the idea is that we may have some like smart contracts capabilities or some dApps that live on a blockchain that somehow wants to leverage a token from a different blockchain. So that's the, I mean, I think that at first this may seem a use case that is of interest just for blockchains like EOS or Ethereum, because there's smart contract. It's applicable to pretty much any blockchain, even to blockchains that are not as smart or as flexible. So the idea in general is to move the value of those cryptocurrencies in a way that is transparent. And I remember we were discussing this actually with some enterprises. When was it? It was, I think, 2017 or 18. So approximately 2 or 3 years ago. They are making me a sign from the backstage saying it was definitely 2017. Okay. So in 2017, I remember we were discussing with some banks because they were interested to run they were afraid of public blockchains, which is still a trend today for many enterprises. But back then it was, all enterprises just wanted to stay in a controlled environment, so on a permission blockchain. And yet they had clients willing to buy Bitcoin or to buy other cryptocurrencies. So they were saying, how can we make financial contracts in a private blockchain, yet giving access to crypto assets such as Bitcoin, but not on the Bitcoin blockchain because we are afraid. So this is when we started thinking of this concept. Can we move Bitcoin to a different blockchain? Can we have cross-chain? Can we make Bitcoin cross-chain or things like that? And in the end, we concluded it was way too early, right? There was just a need in the enterprises for some proof of concepts. So it wasn't really a strong, immediate need for something solid. It was more, a theoretical question, like, can it be done in principle, maybe in a few years' time? And now we're building it because now there is a need for it, not in the enterprise as much. I think there is a need, but it's not as strong as the one we see in DeFi, like with decentralized finance that is happening mostly on EOS and Ethereum. It's important to somehow be able to access the liquidity, the assets in general, and just and what they bring along. So, for example, having Bitcoin is one of the most frequently asked questions. Like, can we have Bitcoin, the liquidity of Bitcoin, and the certainty that somehow the price of Bitcoin has over other tokens on EOS? Can we have it on Ethereum? Can we have it on the liquid sidechain of Bitcoin? Can we have it on Rootstock? Can we have it on on Libra?
On anything.
Or on anything. This applies to any blockchain, and the same question applies opposite. Like, you may say, great, we have made a super safe decentralized stablecoin called EOSDT. Can we have it on Ethereum? Can we have it on Liquid? All these kind of questions are find the same answer, which is the need of a system to move assets around freely. So this is what we started building with pTokens. This took a while initially to be designed because we were starting to think, how can we make a system that is both safe, decentralized, and general purpose? We don't want to make a system that just works with to move a different token on another blockchain. And what if the target blockchain is not the one we think it is? Maybe it's not going to be Ethereum and EOS. Maybe it's going to be another blockchain. We don't know. I mean, those are the most promising ones today. But what happens in 3 years' time, nobody knows, right? So one need is the one of answering to those questions. And the other one is also a kind of an insurance you want of the fact that if you build something today, and you create an ecosystem, you don't want to be locked down in a blockchain that maybe will not get enough traction, because you never know, right? Maybe today we see that the most DeFi traction happens on EOS and Ethereum, and it keeps going like this. Mm-hmm. What happens if tomorrow we have, I don't know, Telegram or Facebook, just to make some examples that are working on it, of companies that are working on it, that create a new blockchain that maybe they don't even call blockchain, and they get a different community than the current blockchain one, which explodes and becomes huge immediately. Because, those companies, they know how to attract developers, right? So what happens if if they succeed, for instance? Wouldn't it be great to be able to use the result of the work that was done over the years on EOS and on Ethereum? Yes, it's possible. Why? I mean, it's not that one needs to, one will not make the other disappear. They can just keep going and interact cross-chain. So this is a specific use case that somehow has similar technical difficulties than the Oracle's problem. You want to make two systems communicate, but it's a very specific use case. It's not a generic transport layer. This is more token transport layer. You want to be able to move value and tokens, which is something very specific, from any blockchain to any other blockchain. So this is what pTokens is.
And in terms of, we had a question come through around this. So with pTokens, is this something that you see being more heavily adopted in DeFi, so decentralized finance, in dApps, decentralized applications, or is there something else in the middle that you see this kind of being adapted for? The cross-chain, by the way, functionality is pretty big for this industry, and kind of the work that's being done on interoperability and the idea of linking a lot of this technology or companies together. But where do you see things being most relevant for pTokens?
I mean, as you correctly stated, this is a challenge that is being worked on by several projects. Yet, many approaches that are different from pTokens, they tend to create a new ecosystem that is neutral, where all the tokens can somehow converge. So they try to basically enable blockchains to communicate together as long as they move to. So what pTokens try to do is stay compatible with existing blockchains and let them work with foreign crypto assets within their own blockchain. So for example, on EOS, you would be able to have a BTC token that looks like a normal EOS token within the EOS ecosystem. So it is one anytime for a Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain. So who is this useful for? Well, this is useful for DeFi first. So I think DeFi is the very reason why we started to build it now and not before. DeFi wasn't, big enough, and it's growing. So build it now, as we see there is a need. There may be other use cases, but is the following. Many people, I think most people in blockchain, they are not power users. They don't even know what dApp is yet, because nobody told them, and because they don't really care much, right? They just wanted maybe to buy Bitcoin or buy Ethereum or buy EOS. They have some tokens.
And the hope is with dApps, it's just the next evolution of applications, right? Not everyone should have
Right.
to know that it's a dApp. They should just know that it's an application.
Correct.
So for
Correct.
some, the mindset's right. It's just there's an underlying piece, big piece that we all talk about on a regular. So sorry, continue.
Yeah. So that's a good point. I mean, dApps, it's all about creating awareness around dApps and creating, strong use cases and making the experience look like it's nothing different from what they normally use. Yet it's better. So if we can provide something that doesn't create more friction than usual, but is better, people will use it. And it doesn't need to be anything, super crazy, or it doesn't need to be complex. Typically, the applications that get more tractions, maybe some, stupid, games or something just simple that gets traction because, just people find it interesting or find it fun. Things like that. So, my point is that these dApps don't necessarily need to be DeFi, but the fact that we have something like pTokens helps to make like a single tool be perceived as something like a more powerful and general purpose. So let's give an example.
Sure.
Let's say that we have a wallet, for example, which is what most blockchain users have, like a normal wallet. It may not be a smart wallet that supports dApps. It's just a dumb, let's call it dumb wallet, like just a wallet where they hold tokens. The fact that they can have pTokens means that token built for one blockchain could potentially be used to access, to buy any token from any blockchain. So it means that let's say you have like an EOS wallet. It means that instead of installing an EOS wallet and a Bitcoin wallet, you can just use the EOS wallet also to hold Bitcoin. So you don't even need to know that a different Bitcoin wallet must be installed for you to hold Bitcoin. You don't care because you don't notice the difference. You just see in your wallet that you are holding BTC. I mean, this is called PBTC because at the moment there is a need to differentiate. But the reality is that if the peg is strong enough, you could call it BTC only, even on EOS, right? Because if it is convertible for BTC and guaranteed to be convertible for BTC, you can just call it BTC on EOS. Similarly to what you do on the Lightning Network. You don't call it like Lightning Network BTC. Most people call it Bitcoin on Lightning Network. The reality is that this is not Bitcoin. This is like something that can be redeemed for Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain. But the security guarantee is considered by the users strong enough that for simplicity, they just call it Bitcoin. So something similar could happen on any other blockchain. The reason why we don't do it yet is that this system has just been designed now, and for ease of for simplicity, we prefer to use a different symbol so that it's clear that this is not Bitcoin.
Right.
Really, there could be different representations of Bitcoin on EOS, but this is the pTokenization of BTC. So this is currently called PBTC. And similarly, you could have, I don't know, maybe there are Ethereum users. I'm thinking of like MetaMask users, for example, that are, if I remember correctly, I think they are more than 1 million, if I understand correctly, right now. So it's really a big number. What if we give them the possibility to hold, P EOSDT on MetaMask? Maybe they don't want, to install an EOS wallet, or they don't know how to do it. Well,
it goes back to the easeability, right? It goes back to the easeability and usability. So for dApps to really take mass in some form, these types of things, technologies like you guys have developed with pTokens, need to exist so that average consumers can just go. I mean, I've researched thousands of companies in the space. We do a ton of work here at Equilibrium, and we're partners with you guys as well on this initiative. And it's not something that's out there very often, or very much. A lot of people are trying to figure it out and work on it, but you guys seem to be a few steps ahead, which is phenomenal. And, if I'm building a dApp today and we had this question come across, can I integrate this? I mean, can I integrate this in my wallet? Can I start using the idea of pTokens today as a developer or as an enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question as we are moving rather quickly on that front, as there are so many combinations that you could do that it's really hard to understand what to prioritize, right? Because the idea is that there are many blockchains, there are many tokens on any blockchain, and the combinations are so many. Like making Bitcoin on Ethereum is not the same challenge as moving EOS on Liquid, for example. It's a completely different challenge. Yes, there are some parts in common. So what we are building with pTokens is like a common core, where that basically has the shared functionalities between the different blockchains, and we are making different components that are reusable in the different circumstances. Yet there is a different, we call it like pipeline, right, for the connections between one blockchain and the other. So there are several. Sorry, I need to introduce some.
No, this is for all the developers out there. We're getting questions incoming. This is great. This is all for the developers out there. If you're looking to develop in this space, you're building your dApp, whether it's in any category we've talked or not talked about, it's in DeFi. What Thomas is about to say right now is very, very important. So turn up the volume. Go ahead.
So yeah, what I was saying is that basically there are different bridges between different blockchains, and each bridge is kind of works slightly differently depending on the blockchain that you start and from or go to. So for instance, on EOS, we have implemented pTokenized assets. You may want to move to EOS, the EOS blockchain, like PBTC, for instance, or PETH. Those, on EOS, they take the form of like an EOS token. So they are like a standard token, basically. On Ethereum, there are different standards. So, for instance, on Ethereum, we have used an ERC 777, which is it's compatible, it's backwards compatible with ERC20, but it has some extra functionalities. So, on Bitcoin, for instance, how do you do that? I mean, it's not possible to have Bitcoins, to have tokens on Bitcoin. So how do you move EOSDT on Bitcoin? That's not possible on the layer 1, right? It's not possible on the Bitcoin blockchain itself. You must use other protocols. So for example, if you use, I don't know, the Liquid sidechain or Rootstock is compatible with Ethereum. So it will look similar to a token on Ethereum, while Liquid has its own, they call it, they call them assets. So the tokens on, you can have a token on Liquid. So this is on top of Bitcoin that moves there an Ethereum itself, or maybe the NUTD NAV token, right? Or it could be any other token from any ecosystem. So all these different combinations, they are called the bridges. So the ones we currently have running are like Bitcoin on Ethereum. This is in production with real money. So it's going. We have the system running on testnet and mainnet. Then we have on testnet only. We have Litecoin on Ethereum, which is very similar to Bitcoin on Ethereum. Then we have PEOS on Ethereum on testnet. So this is like EOS or potentially any other token, right? But that bridge we have started is specifically for EOS at the moment on Ethereum. We could bootstrap very easily, similar one for EOSDT. So it will be PEOSDT from EOS to Ethereum. And then we have one in the workings that we are releasing most likely this week. It's being finalized now. That is basically PBTC on EOS. So this is on the testnet, it will be launched on the mainnet very soon. But the idea is to have Bitcoin as a token on EOS that can be basically created by anyone if they have Bitcoin and can be redeemed for Bitcoin by anyone. So if you have, for example, a Bitcoin or a fraction of a Bitcoin on an exchange or on like Bitcoin wallet, anywhere, you can just do what we call the peg-in process. So you pTokenize it, you transform it into, let's say you have one Bitcoin, it becomes one PBTC on EOS. So once you have one PBTC on EOS, it can, you can transact, you can use it. Maybe you use it, as a collateral for, in Equilibrium for EOSDT. And what you can do at any time is you can, you know how much it is worth. You know the exact value of it because there is no friction for the peg in and peg out. So anyone can convert a PBTC back to Bitcoin directly. You can also just withdraw a PBTC from EOS, and you can peg out. So it get basically destroyed. It's removed from circulation, and it's like the underlying Bitcoin gets released. So, and it gets released to maybe your Bitcoin deposit address on an exchange. So you receive directly a Bitcoin from EOS. So you have an EOS wallet and maybe just an exchange, which is a normal exchange, and you can go from the Bitcoins on that exchange to EOS and opposite, like from a PBTC on EOS to the exchange. So it's very easy also to liquidate, right? Like you have a PBTC on EOS, you don't need to worry like who is supporting PBTC, is PBTC supported by the exchange? I mean, who cares? You can just peg out and go to BTC. So it's very quick. You don't need to even worry around the possibility of it being listed. I mean, it could be listed. Actually, we are in discussions with Bitfinex. They plan to, they should announce it shortly. They have plans to basically support PBTC directly on the exchange. So as I said, this is not needed, but it may be preferred for, by market makers, for instance, just because they want to do it quickly without waiting for the Bitcoin confirmation. Maybe they want to transfer PBTC on EOS directly, and they want to receive the deposit on Bitfinex to sell it without having to worry of the peg-out procedure or of the Bitcoin confirmation for the deposit of Bitcoins, the Bitcoins released, and things like that. But as I said, you can do it on any exchange because it can just be converted for Bitcoin.
That's great. That's great. So Thomas, I want to do some lightning round questions here. We've got a ton of good ones that have come in. So I want to throw you a few quick answers or quick questions for quick answers.
Yep.
So we'll give a few shout outs to some of those that are answering questions as well. You guys have done a wonderful job, and Thomas, you're doing great flagging all these. So a quick question from Chuck. So wanted to know the difference quickly on Provable's oracles versus liquid apps, liquid oracles. And the reason he's asking is he's building a dApp network of sorts and is curious if we see in the future multiple oracles working together in a dApp network. So.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the differences are many because the approach we follow is quite unique. So there are different oracles that have different trust models. So I think it's very reasonable to expect that for a dApp developer to integrate with more than one oracle. I mean, this is just it's just safer, right? Why would you integrate with just one oracle if you can integrate with more than one? Yet the way Provable works right now gives a lot of guarantees around the data we send back. So what does it mean? That basically you don't need to trust what we say around the data we send back. We always support all our responses from the oracle with what we call authenticity proofs. So the authenticity proofs are cryptographic proofs that show the data is authentic, meaning that it's the same that was given back to us by the data source. So you can verify that any data we send back to the blockchain really comes from the data source with no alterations from us. So this gives you 100% guarantee it has not been tampered with.
So going back to what we talked...
Yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that basically the system is safe as it shows data is authentic. If you want very strong guarantees on the fact that we will always answer, because for example, I don't know, you are making let's make let's give an example which is extreme. Let's say you are making an application that you know is illegal. Okay, don't do that. But let's assume you do it. So let's assume you do it. You may have concerns that the regulator will try to shut it down. So in that case, Provable is not the best fit because at the moment, we don't provide guarantees of the fact that you will always receive an answer. What we guarantee is that if you do receive an answer from us, and so far everyone has received an answer, so this has never happened so far, but in theory it could happen. So what you know is that when we answer, we prove data is authentic. But if you're making something illegal, it's at the moment we are not giving guarantees on censorship resistance for the Oracle service. We are doing that for pTokens. So for pTokens, you don't have to worry as the system is fully decentralized, and we are working hard to reach that point, as it will be a gradual process of progressive decentralization. But with the Oracle service, right now it's not decentralized, as it doesn't need to be for our trust model. We prove that when we answer, the answer is authentic.
Love it. Okay, so Mayor has a question. We've got a few that relate to this, so we're gonna pick theirs. How does Provable deal with issues of scalability, security, and interoperability associated with blockchain today? Now, we talked about a few of those pieces, but I think security we haven't really touched much on. So.
Since you asked me to be quick in the answers, I will try to do my best. So as for the scalability, the system is designed to scale like horizontally, meaning that there can be new nodes added that basically help linearly on the number of nodes to process the number of queries. So over the years, the system has been made increasingly robust. Still, blockchain is really complex to deal with because there are so many things that could go wrong. For example, on EOS, we didn't have this issue, but on Ethereum, sending transactions in the correct way under like network congestion was a real nightmare. So there are like some systems like a new project called AnySender, for instance, that enable projects to basically delegate to them the hassle of dealing with congestion, and they do a great job there. But back then, when we started, there was nothing, so we had to build it internally. So we had to build many systems to deal with the congestion with very quickly varying gas prices on Ethereum and things like that. On EOS, we didn't have that specific problem, but for instance, on EOS, like our challenge is running reliably many instances of EOS nodes that have a full history, and for the different mainnets and testnets. So that's one challenge. As for the security, we focus on providing strong authenticity proofs. So I don't have time to dive into them, but if you look at our documentation, there is a good explanation of the different authenticity proofs we provide. For example, there is a specific one for random number generation, which is very common it's a common use case for us on EOS. Like there are many, gambling games or applications like that need a random number in a secure way outside of the blockchain, because it's not safe to generate it on the blockchain in most circumstances. They reach out to us, we generate the random number, and we prove the random number is authentic. In that case, we prove it has been generated securely on a Ledger device according to Ledger. So you need to trust the data source again, which is Ledger in that case. If you trust the Ledger hardware wallet manufacturer, the random number is really safe.
Love it. So few more questions here real quick. EOS versus Ethereum for DeFi. Do you see one better than the other? Do you see one leading the way for decentralized finance as an underlying blockchain?
So we are integrated with both. So personally, I don't have a strong opinion on that. I think that EOS and Ethereum could both succeed in DeFi. The number of projects building DeFi applications is higher on Ethereum at the moment, mostly because I think the tools there are have been out there for longer. So currently there are more developers on Ethereum for historical reasons. I started earlier, but I think EOS has more flexibility when you make when you write contracts actually. So they could be more powerful more easily if they wanted to. Yet tools need to improve a little bit. So I think it will be a fight between the two blockchains. And I think it's not really a big deal because the moment we make the chains easily communicate, we can have progress on both chains and benefit on both chains. So why would it be a problem? Like Equilibrium, we could very well use, for trading on DEX or for financial tools on Ethereum. I don't see any problem with that.
Second to last question. Mayor threw this out, and it's a good question, I think, for relevant times. DeFi is while great, internet access is generally needed to engage. So how do you see DeFi developing in less developed countries where limited internet access is available? What do you think that approach will be for DeFi scalability?
That's a great question, but to me, that's a big challenge, and there are many answers to this. I will share a couple of them shortly, but what I wanted to say is that I think this may be a concern that will just disappear by itself in a matter of a few years. Because on the one hand, we have companies that are working outside of the blockchain space that are working really hard to connect to the internet those people that don't currently have access to the internet. And they are doing it with all, very complex systems. Like in some cases, they are simple balloons that, just distribute the internet over very wide territories. In other cases, it's just, satellite internet being much more efficient and cheaper. We see SpaceX doing that. We see, Google and Amazon investing a lot of money to connect much wider audience or even in other developed countries. So that's why I'm saying that maybe in a few years' time, this will not really be a concern even for DeFi. And actually, it may be a great achievement for DeFi because what happens is that those countries don't just need an internet connection that they currently don't have, but they also need a financial system that is kind of underdeveloped as well or missing. So the fact that we connect them to the internet before giving them access to the financial legacy system creates an opportunity for DeFi. Because as soon as they are connected to the internet, and we are not alone, because many companies that, even just for the market cap of one of those is bigger than the entire blockchain space, those companies, they are working to connect them. So once they are connected, they will need a financial system. And we will be able to provide them at zero cost DeFi, because DeFi is borderless by design. It's not tied to a single country. And on the other hand, something we need to consider is that also within the blockchain, we are working hard to achieve that. Think of Blockstream, for example, that lets anyone synchronize with a Bitcoin blockchain, for instance, via satellite. Like you get a satellite dish and you connect, you receive Bitcoin transactions without internet. That's great because you don't even need to pay a subscription. You just pay a fixed cost for the hardware, for the dish to connect to the satellite, and you're done. You don't pay anything else. You're just connected to the Bitcoin blockchain, regardless of your country even giving you access to the internet. You don't need the internet. So that's great.
So last question before we wrap. What has you excited about blockchain DeFi this year in 2020? And you can't mention Provable, you can't mention pTokens. So what else has got you excited about this year and what's happening in the industry?
Can I mention Equilibrium?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
There are many interesting projects in the space, right? We are living a very strange moment in history, probably, because of coronavirus and everything going on, right? And we have seen, we are all really surprised, right, of what happened last week, for instance, with market prices and with the ecosystem that keeps going. The price maybe went down, but I don't think any developer or project I know has stopped working. They just keep going, saying, okay, that's great, because of course the recession is not great, the problems we are living are not great, but there is an opportunity for delivering to a much wider audience tools we are building to be rock solid. This ecosystem was built to resist situations that are stressful, situations where the legacy system is not capable of keeping up. So the fact that now we have some months, some years to prove it is sort of it's a big responsibility for us, I think. And I think it's also a big challenge, but a big opportunity. So what excites me going forward is also the possibility to prove it, because we have been working hard for several years in this space, and I think it's still early, but the first results are coming out of this. It's not anymore something theoretical where we say maybe in 10 years time someone will care. I think now people can start to care and have an interest for this. Prices falling is is nowhere, in my opinion, a signal of this ecosystem not working. This will be absurd. This is like saying that that gold is not a reserve of value, because with the last crisis in 2008, it went down with a downtrend during the recession for 8 months. So does it mean that it's not a store of value? Well, no, that's stupid. Nobody would say that gold is not a store of value. And actually, last week, gold went down. So this doesn't really prove that cryptocurrencies, just because they went down, are not a good store of value, or that they are not resistant to recession. So what I think is that the many new projects we are seeing and new concepts that are coming out will prove themselves very useful, especially in the hard times. So it's our responsibility now, to bring them to production, to keep going, and so on. But things like, I don't know, put together, for example, is an amazing project, because being able to go to a crowd of non-technical people, telling them, look, you can participate into a lottery, and first, you never lose, because in the best case, you win and you get some extra money. In the worst case, you get your money back. I mean, this sounds like a scam, right? But it is not. But it is not. And the amazing part is that it's not. So it means we have created something disruptive. And the fact that we have created something disruptive means we are doing something valuable. So, so to conclude, I think this is just one example, very high level, of what could be done with tools like DeFi, with stablecoins that have foundations, things like EOSDT are critical for this ecosystem to work. Yet, they need higher level applications. So those tools, they enable higher level applications, and those higher level applications need to be disruptive and provide you to the average Joe. And I think we're getting there.
I love it. Thomas, thank you so much for today's time. We went overtime, so thank you for hopefully not missing a meeting, but thank you for spending more time with us.
Thank you.
And we'll, to the community, thank you for all the questions. Thomas, we had a ton of questions come in, and you got to a lot of them. For those who we didn't get to, as we said, continue to ask them. I believe Robin and the rest of Thomas's team from Provable have already jumped into the Telegram chat on our side, on Equilibrium, and let you know that you can follow into pTokens and into the Provable chats to continue to engage with the team and make sure your questions get answered as well. And we'll include all links and things that were mentioned today in the description and in the wrap-up session that we put together afterwards. Thomas, last shout out. Where can people go? What do you want people to know? Go ahead and give us your last shout.
Yeah, so we are launching shortly the P network, which is basically the network that will back pTokens decentralization part. So if you go to p.network, this is currently redirecting to the pTokens website, but which is ptokens.io. But shortly you will find there also more resources. For our community, it is on Telegram. So you can just go to pTokens channel. So just write pTokens on Telegram and you should find it. Our Twitter is similarly very easy to find, just pTokens.io. And yeah, keep following us on our channels and on Equilibrium ones, as we will be releasing some announcements shortly.
Very shortly. Really looking forward to it. Again, Thomas, thank you. Thank you to the entire Provable and pTokens team who's been active in supporting this entire engagement today. And again, Thomas, thank you for your time. Thank you to the community, for everybody who tuned in. I'll let you know that we will be back on April 1st with our next session and our next guest, Max Dapp, a YouTuber and crypto blogger. We're looking forward to it. Keep your questions tight and feel free to drop those in the chat in the coming weeks. Again, Thomas, thank you.
Thanks, Kyle, and to everyone for the great questions.
Thanks, everybody.